everybody, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day today. So this video is about where the simple interest formula comes from and also how to use it. So take 3 deep breaths and let's make this math easy. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about what simple interest is. So simple interest is actually not used very often in the real world just because you can make way more money with compound interest. So when people lend people money, they'll usually do it with compound interest because it makes them more money. But occasionally, simple interest will be used in the real world, and it will help us build our understanding of how interest works so that we can calculate compound interest. So the idea of simple interest is that you only make interest on the money that was initially invested. With compound interest, which we'll learn about in a later video, you also make money on the interest. So you earn interest on the interest you've already earned. But with simple interest, you only make interest on the money that is initially invested. Or if you're the one borrowing the money, you only pay interest on the money that you originally borrowed. So if we look at this example, and it says that we are borrowing $2,600 and we agree to pay it back after 7 years with 5% annual simple interest, and we want to look at how much interest we'll pay as well as how much money total we'll have to pay back. Well, the way that we want to look at this is because we're paying 5% annual simple interest, and the word annual means every year. Because we're paying 5% every year for 7 years, then that means the total amount of interest that we'll end up paying is 35% of the amount that we borrowed. So the way that we would calculate the interest in this case is we would say the interest equals $2,600 times 35%, which if I write that as a decimal, is written like this. And in general, the way we write this as a formula is we say that the interest equals our initial amount, which we represent by the variable P, because P stands for principal, which is like the initial amount of a loan. And then you multiply this by the interest rate times the amount of time that that interest rate is being charged. And time is always going to be measured in years because interest rates are also always measured annually. And so you take the interest rate that you pay every year and you multiply by how many years it is. And so this is the general formula that you can use to calculate the interest whenever you're charging simple interest. And we'll learn about compound interest later, but we're just starting off with simple interest. So this is how you would find the interest, and in the problem we're solving, this would answer the first question they asked, because I could do 2,600 times 0.35, and that would equal $910. So that would be the interest that I would pay. And then the second question says, how much money total will you pay back? So if you think about it, well, the amount you're going to have to pay back is the initial amount you paid plus the interest. So the way that we would calculate that is we would say the initial amount we pay back, which I'm going to call A, that would equal 2,600 because that's the initial amount I borrowed. And then I would add my interest of 910, and that would tell me that I need to pay back $3,510. So essentially, you just take your initial amount and add on the interest amount. So the formula for this is A equals the initial amount plus the formula that we use to find the interest. Now, usually we don't write the formula like this because it's a little bit inconvenient to have two P's in the same equation. And so the way we write it instead is we say A equals P times 1 plus RT. Because if you factor out a P, then you'll just have a single P in the equation. And this formula is a little bit easier to work with. But this is where it comes from. And you can also kind of think about this as being like the R times T will tell you the amount of interest you pay in total. So like in this case, it would be like the 35% interest because you're multiplying 7 years times 5%. And then the 1 is basically saying that you're also going to pay back 100% of your original loan. So the 1 is kind of saying like you have 100% of whatever was originally borrowed plus the interest part. So that's how you can interpret that equation. So the simple interest formulas, you have 2 of them, and the one you decide to use depends on whether or not you have the interest or if you have the ending amount. So as you're reading through the problems in this unit, you're going to pay attention to which variables you're given. So there's 4 different types of variables that you might have. There's A, which is the total amount. P is the original amount. I is the interest that you end up paying. R is the interest rate. And T is the amount of time. And because the simple interest formulas are relatively simple, like there's no exponents or things like that in them, you can solve for any of these variables. So in some of the problems, you might be looking for the total amount. In other ones, you might be looking for the interest rate or the time or the original amount or possibly the interest. And so I'm going to go through several examples in future videos that show how to solve for each of these variables. But the main idea is that you look at what variables you were given in the problem, what variable you're looking for, and you choose the formula that has those variables in it, and then you just use algebra to solve the equations. So if you're a little bit rusty on your algebra, that's what the future videos are for, because I'm going to go through some examples of how to solve these equations. But the information on this slide is the main information you need to know to be able to solve the simple interest problems. So I hope that this was helpful, and I hope you guys have a good day.